be in compliance?
In compliance with the Freedom of Information Act, notice of meetings and agendas were posted and furnished to all news media and persons requesting notification.
Okay. Can I have approval of the meeting of the notes from October 16th, 2024?
Motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Turn that off. We don't need that. Unanimous approval. We don't need that. Staff update, please. Overview 2025.
Just a reminder on that agenda, amending the agenda there before we get started on that.
Sorry, yeah, let's go back and do that. Sorry. Hey, staff notified me that the addendum item was accidentally overlooked. It's time to once again nominate, elect officers for the subcommittee. I'll entertain a motion to amend the agenda to add the nomination and election of officers at this point in the meeting. So moved. Well, we need a nomination for chairperson.
I nominate Charlie to remain chairperson.
I think we need to, let's approve the motion to amend the agenda first.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's
And
unanimous.
who was the second on that?
Second, please.
Jason? Okay. Mr.
Now,
Cromsberg.
all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous has it. Now, go ahead.
A motion for Charlie to remain chair of the subcommittee. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous has it. We need a vice chair. I nominate Beazer to be vice chair.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous has it. On to the update, overview of 2025 winter project applications.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to turn it over now to Chris Dubuque, Program Manager for Greenbelt. Let him run this part of the meeting today.
Right. So for the FY25 winter cycle, we had a total of 5 projects, 2 being rural, 3 being urban. The first rural project is the Botany Bay Expansion 2, Ocella Creek Point. That's a fee simple project located on Edisto Island. Next, we have the Freeman Anderson Conservation Easement located on Johns Island. And then for our 3 urban projects, we have Copley Chapel Park, located, that's going to be a fee simple project located in urban unincorporated area. And then we have the Town of Sullivan's Island Station 24 Boardwalk, minor improvements only project. And then finally, the Town of Mount Pleasant, another Mount Pleasant Way segment on Rifle Range corridor project. If all 5 projects are approved, we protect an additional 29.5 acres and 10,000, a little over 10,000 linear feet of multi-use path and corridor. So this map will show you an overview of the location for these 5 properties. You have the Botany Bay expansion down here on Edisto Island, the Freeman Anderson Conservation Easement on Johns Island, just outside the urban growth boundary. And then our 3 urban projects up to the north, Copley Chapel Park, located in the historic Hamlin Beach community, and then our Mount Pleasant Way segment and Station 24 Boardwalk on Sullivan's Island there. So here's an overview of the funding for the FY25 winter cycle. For the 2 rural projects, the requested funds would total $635,700. If both of those projects are approved, that would leave a balance of about $8.2 million. For the Town of Sullivan's Island, for the urban projects, the town is requesting $29,595 in the town's urban funds. As you can see, the funds on hand slightly less than the requested amount, and that's a result of the pro rata allocation that was approved last funding cycle for the Red Top project. So if this project is approved, it would leave a temporary negative balance of $1,564 until that FY26 allocation kicks in beginning of July. For the Town of Mount Pleasant urban funds, they're requesting $1,073,100. The funds on hand currently are negative $72,300. $357,000. Again, that's a result of the pro rata funding that was approved last cycle. So if that project is approved, we'd have a negative balance of $1.1 million. And again, that would be temporary until the FY26 allocation kicked in. That projection is supposed to be similar to FY25, which is about $1.3 million. So that would get them out of the negative come July. For the urban unincorporated, we have the Coakley Chapel Park. They're requesting $1,714,500. As you know, this is a depleted allocation for urban unincorporated. We're currently sitting at negative $4.2 million. If further forward spending was approved for this project, that would leave a negative balance of $5.9 million with a lifetime of $939,000. The alternative is a recommendation from the board to pull funding from an alternative allocation there. So for the total urban projects, we're looking at $2.8 million, and if all are approved, we'd have a balance of $1.3 million. And for all projects of this cycle, the requested funds are $3.4 million, and if all are approved, we'd have a balance of $9.5 million and $159 million in the lifetime. Any questions on the funding? All right, we'll get into the project presentations, public comments, and subcommittee considerations. So first project up for consideration is the Botany Bay Expansion 2, Osceola Creek Point project. The applicant is Edisto Island Open Land Trust. This is a fee simple rural project. It totals 18.2 acres off of Point of Pines Road here on Edisto Island. These projects, once secured, would be transferred to DNR and incorporated into the Botany Bay Heritage Preserve, this is all preserve area to the left here of those properties. This is a part reimbursement and part fee simple acquisition project. So the smaller parcel there, 3.7 acres, has been purchased by the land trust, and they're seeking reimbursement for that parcel. And then the larger 4.5 acre parcel, they are under contract to purchase. They're requesting $570,000 in rural Greenbelt funds with a 45% match, equaling $255,000. And I will turn it over to Tom Austin, the Director of Land Conservation with Edisto Island Open Land Trust, to present the project.
Thank you, Chris. Happy to be in front of y'all again today. And again, I always appreciate the opportunity to be able to apply to Greenbelt. We wouldn't be able to do the conservation work we do on Edisto without y'all's help. And I'm excited to be able to bring this Osceola Creek Point project in front of y'all today. Finally, we've been working on this for several years now, and it's finally at a point that I can bring it in front of y'all for consideration. So the property is composed of two parcels totaling 18.2 acres roughly in size. The smaller access lot is 3.7 acres, and the larger peninsula lot is at least 14.5 acres. It hasn't been surveyed in a very long time. We have the new updated survey getting done right now, and so I expect that to be closer to 16 or 17 acres once it's finally resurveyed. It's currently vacant forested land. It's been used communally by the neighborhood in the Clark community for decades, over a century actually, for communal use, for public use by that community, and we're hoping to cement that with the creation of public access to the site through Botany Bay. It's covered in maritime fringe forest throughout the most of it, as well as hard salt marsh in the margins. It is accessible from Point of Pines Road and has Tidal Creek access to Osceola Creek. There's a dirt road connecting it from Point of Pines to the peninsula lot, and there's an existing improved dirt road within Botany Bay that runs all the way up to a gate right at the peninsula lot. This property is only about a half mile from our publicly accessible and Greenbelt funded Hutchinson House property, which itself is only about a half mile from the Edisto Island Community Recreation Area, which we hold the easement on, and which was funded by Greenbelt, which will be a hub for community recreation and community facilities for all of Edisto Island. The property though small, is very dense in conservation values. It's an ecologically sensitive area. It's composed of maritime forests and marsh islands, which provide habitat for many threatened and endangered species, including eastern diamondback rattlesnakes, swallowtail kites, bald eagles, salt marsh sparrows, both migratory monarchs as well as southern plains bumblebees and American bumblebees, as well as tricolored bats and northern long-eared bats. There's a lot of threatened and endangered wildlife that utilize this property. It's also one of the primary feeding sites of the whimbrels that roost on DeVoe Bank every May when they migrate through to the Arctic Circle. These hard marshes here are just filled with fiddler crabs, which is their primary food source when they're bulking up in May before they move north to the Arctic Circle. And this property is only about 3 miles as the crow, or I should say as the whimbrel flies from DeVoe Bank. So this is a primary feeding ground surrounding this property. It's directly connected on the western boundary to Botany Bay. There is a grove of large grand live oaks, probably over 200 years old, in the southwestern corner, which I'll focus on a little bit here in a second. And it has scenic views from basically every angle of the property. It's on the old historic Point of Pines Road on the north. It bounds Botany Bay entirely on the west. And the entire southern aspect from the property is nothing but the wall of protected green that is Botany Bay and the unspoiled marshes of Ocella Creek. And it's currently listed for sale on the open market, and any development to this property would impair the conservation values in these sensitive habitats on the property. Our hope with this is to expand public access throughout from Botany Bay onto this property. Like I said, there is already an existing trail system that butts right up to this property. All DNR would have to do is open the gate and extend it to the existing trail system on this property. DNR has committed to taking ownership of the peninsula lot. They are working through the internal process for the access lot right now as we speak. I hope for that to be forthcoming in the next month or two. And we hope for there to be access for walking trails, for bird watching, wildlife viewing, expansion of the public hunting opportunities on Botany Bay, in addition to potentially having bank access for fishing, as well as a kayak launch on site to connect to the Sea Cloud kayak launch already present on Botany Bay. And as mentioned, it is very close to our Hutchinson House property, which is publicly accessible in the Edisto Island Community Recreation Area. Show up here. This is the Edisto Island Community Recreation Area up here, which is about a half mile from the Hutchinson House. There's only 2 lots separating these 2 properties, and I'm very hopeful that in the near future we will be able to create a greenway connection between these 2. If that's possible, we'll be able to then create a greenway connection down Point of Pines Road to this. I'm actively working on that effort. All of this purple you see here is Botany Bay. This is the Open Space Institute's Botany Bay expansion project y'all funded back in 2021 down here, which connects to several of our own scenic buffer projects over here, as well as is very close by the 5 Sunnyside conservation easements, as well as the Governor's Bluff easement that we hold that were funded by Greenbelt. We hope to unify all of this one day into one large contiguous over 5,000 acre block of protected lands on Edisto Island, and eventually connect that to the 6,000 acre block of protected lands on the northwestern corner of Edisto Island eventually. Additionally, I wanted to highlight our Store Creek Park project right here at the head of Point of Pines Road that y'all funded last cycle. I again want to hopefully eventually connect that to these through a public access greenway of some shape and form, but that will be a little bit more difficult to implement in the future. Enough about my future plans. This property also has a lot of historic significance from its past. This was once part of the Shell House Plantation, which was part of the first land grant to Paul Grimble on Edisto Island in 1683. This 404 acre plantation was eventually subdivided off, and then in 1878 it was purchased by a co-op of freedmen during the Reconstruction era led by Jim Hutchinson, whose son Henry Hutchinson built the Hutchinson House, which we are now restoring and going to we are going to open up as a museum and provide public access there. When that house is very near it completing the second phase of restoration, hopefully in the next month or 2. But this plat that you're seeing up here is the original subdivision plat from 1878, updated in 1898, and this is the last current plat for the peninsula lot. Hence why we're getting it resurveyed right now. But this property, lot number 21 specifically, the peninsula lot, was the first property sold out of this co-op after they purchased half of it up front and mortgaged it, and that was sold to Peter Campbell and has been in the Campbell family ever since for the last 145 years. And then the family has listed for sale in the market, and we have it under contract to purchase. The property has the remnants of Sea Island cotton fields extant in the marshes on the access lot, and we believe the Gullah Cemetery for all of Shell House Plantation might be in the southwestern corner of the peninsula lot. But the property was entirely farm fields up until the 1950s. The Campbell family lived on the property until the mid-1950s, before the farmhouse was demolished and the whole property converted to farmland. It remained in truck cropping until the late 90s, when all the fields were allowed to go fallow. So in the southwestern corner of the peninsula lot, there is a telltale grove of grand live oaks between 150 and 200 years old in a ring around that corner of the property. We have not been able to locate a cemetery anywhere in the Shell House or Clark plantation that you see in the plat up there, and we suspect that this might be the enslaved people's cemetery, as well as a freed person's Gullah cemetery following the Civil War. We'll need to do GPR work to be able to confirm that, but I've crawled around basically every corner of Edisto Island at this point, and when you find a stand of 200-year-old live oaks in the middle of a field that someone didn't convert into agriculture, there was a reason for it. 9 times out of 10, it's a cemetery. Additionally, this top photo that you see up here, these are extant relic Sea Island cotton field lines that are still present on the access lot. Up until the 1920s, they were planting marginal salt marsh in Sea Island cotton, and this was being done by the Campbell family, and additionally by the whole community in the whole Clark community. Henry Hutchinson operated an agricultural co-op for this community. You can see his gin house up there. He was able to sort, grade, and process cotton for everyone in the community and deal directly with Charleston, helping them avoid prejudice to black cotton in the middlemen that were between most small independent freedmen farmers and the Charleston markets. So that's how he was able to elevate his community. That's the story we're telling at the Hutchinson House. This middle photo here is Henry and Rosa out in front of the Hutchinson House, showing their fields of Sea Island cotton there. And down there at the bottom is the strain of Sea Island cotton we're growing for demonstration at the Hutchinson House, which originates from Bleak Hall, which is Botany Bay, which was the exact strain grown both on the Campbell property and the Hutchinson House property. So this fits into a much larger narrative that we have for the Hutchinson House and that we have for the preservation work that we're doing in the Clark community. But with all those conservation values said, there are acquisition challenges that we are facing. We have been under contract to purchase the peninsula lot for about 2.5 years. It is an heirs property, which means it has substantial title issues. The family is working right now to clear up those issues. When we started out on this project, there were 186 individuals that needed to consolidate their interest. They're down to about 32 now. They currently have a 74% interest in the property. They're beginning to officially start the quiet title and the partition sale suits that will be necessary for them to clear up title. We are waiting in the wings to be able to buy this property as soon as the title is clear. No acquisition funding will be spent on this purchase until title is clear. We can't protect the property unless we have clear title. Y'all can't disperse funds on the property unless there's clear title. DNR won't take the property unless there's clear title. So I would like this to have a little bit more time on the vine before I brought it in front of y'all, but we had the opportunity to buy the access lot last year, and so I need to bring that forward for reimbursement at this point, and that property doesn't make sense without seeing the whole context of this project. That property, we have ownership of the highlands there, free and clear, but the ownership of the road is a little bit nebulous at the moment. I have an order from Charleston County conveying any and all interest in the road to us, as well as a quitclaim deed from the prior owner. But currently it was left out of that owner's deed, so we'll have to do our own quiet title process on that road. And additionally, there's a 90-foot stretch in there we're going to figure out with this updated plat whether or not that's in a third party's hands. And if so, we already know that third party. It's the Hutchinson family, and we're hopeful they'll be able to help connect that access strip if that is in fact a hang-up in full ownership of that road. And going into the financials and quick to wrap this up, the access lot is the reimbursement portion of this request. The property appraised for $115,000. The landowner thankfully sold it to us for $80,000, so that's $35,000 of match. And we have put $5,000-ish forward already for the due diligence on that acquisition. We are requesting full reimbursement of the $80,000 we spent for the acquisition itself. The peninsula lot is the purchase portion that is still pending. Our contract price is for $630,000. The appraisal we have is for $625,000. We're paying that $5,000 difference and any other difference that comes out from the final appraisal and whatever the final contract price ends up being. We are requesting $435,000 from Greenbelt. I have a pending request to the Conservation Bank for an additional $190,000 to make up that difference. I will be submitting that either in April or in July, depending on timing with other projects. And we have also requested $20,000 for due diligence to cover expenses with this acquisition. We have an existing $25,000 grant that's covering all of these upfront costs as we're working towards acquisition. And that will be applied preferentially. We have also requested $35,000 in minor improvements to repair the road before we deed it over to DNR, get a gate installed, and potentially get a small dirt parking lot put in up by Point of Pines Road in order to allow the public to access the property from there. For those of y'all that were out there, the road is that went out there and saw it, the road is in very rough shape, and so in order to make this publicly accessible, we need to get that road up to perfect working order for DNR's use as a maintenance road and for use as a walking path for the public. That brings our total request to $570,000 with $255,000 match. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions?
Yes.
Is the access road on the access lot at all debated? I mean, are you gonna successfully get that?
I don't foresee any opposition there. We have an order from the county. It was designated a county road on a pre-existing plat, and the Public Works has absolutely no record of it ever being a county road. And it was just left out of the deed because a prior plat had labeled it that. We don't expect any issues there, but it's a formality we have to go through with the quiet title process.
Do we have any public comments on this one?
No, sir.
Okay. Any other questions?
Is there direct access from Botany Bay right now,
Yes.
or will there be?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's the existing maintenance road and trail system on Botany Bay runs right up to the peninsula lot, and there's a gate right there. All they would have to do is open the gate. So
Can you go back to the main map that shows both?
Do we have monitors? Can you turn them on it? So you can see these monitors below? Okay.
wherever this mouse is, there it is, somewhere.
Go ahead.
So that, I guess it's,
Yeah.
there's no TMS on the L that wraps the property. Is that the parcel in question?
Yes. Right now, the way that the tax map system has it labeled, it shows that as being no man's land, but what we can tell from this 1898 plat is that it's actually, that marshland should surround the entire property. That is owned by the Hutchinson family currently.
Got it.
And I apologize, I can't get the cursor to come, oh, there it is. Yeah. So this is where the gate is right now, currently on Botany Bay. You can, if you have permission to access this property, you can walk right into Botany Bay. I've done it many a time already. You can view the property through Botany Bay. You have to walk about a mile to get up there, though.
Can you go over one more time how the smaller lot interacts with the bigger lot in terms of the big picture of what you're trying to do here?
So the only way to be able to access this lot from Point of Pines Road is through the existing dirt road that runs right down the western boundary of Botany Bay to this lot. So if we were to wanted to create the connection between the Hutchinson house to Botany Bay through here and to provide secondary access to Botany Bay through Point of Pines so that people can experience the northern end of the property without having to hike 5 miles, this would be the only way to access it.
Gotcha. Okay.
How about that little L shape between the two? It's a little skinny lot between the two.
Yes. That, we believe, is currently owned by the descendants of Henry Hutchinson. We know them. We have a good working relationship with them. We're restoring their family's home. We're currently getting the plat done right now to determine if that is indeed, in fact, still owned by them, or if that gap between the two is part of the access lot.
That would make sense if you
Yeah.
can get it all.
Yeah. And if we find out that that is, in fact, a third party in the middle of that, we will work with the family to get that little 0.4 acre piece in between them. Or at the very least, a right-of-way through there.
Is there any time constraint on you guys that you would want to comment on to help color a motion if we were to suggest that we would want acceptance pending the successful acquisition of access all the way? Or defined legal access all the way?
As far as timing goes, it's very difficult to put a number on that. We currently have already purchased the access lot. We have that money already spent in the bank, or spent out of the bank. Everything else is very much dependent on legal work that'll have to be done. So we don't really have a limit on the timing there on our end. Having reimbursement for the access lot would be good now, but if that needs to wait.
Any more questions? Call the motion.
Okay, I'll motion for acceptance of the, let me see if I can, let me just take a second to phrase this correctly. I'll motion for acceptance of the Botany Bay expansion in its entirety, provided or with the provision that full legal access has to be demonstrated before it's funded.
And amended with clear title to be in Charleston County's name 100%. We don't want to own 74% of it.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
That would work for us.
You want to clarify anything, Eric?
No, I was just going to ask you to make sure your mics are down. It'll help us hear everything when we go back and do the minutes. Thank you.
Go ahead. Let's try it one more time.
Okay. I motion for full acceptance of the Botany Bay expansion, provided there's clear legal access through what is known as the access lot all the way into the peninsula lot
With clear title.
with clear title.
Do I have a motion?
That was the motion.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous has it. Next, thank you.
Hold on. What's wrong with that, Eric?
We just have a few questions, but we can clarify all that at the GAB meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Just as
Thank
far
you.
as timing and when funds would be released for the reimbursement and some different stuff. But let us think on that for a little bit, and we'll bring a recommendation to the GAB.
Thank you.
And also, the monitors up front are being replaced by facilities, so they're not working.
That's okay.
Sorry.
We just got turned, that's all. Knowing that, I can live with it. Next.
Okay, the next project up for consideration is the Freeman Anderson Conservation Easement. The applicant is the Kiowa Island Natural Habitat Conservancy. This is a rural conservation easement located off Betsy Carrison Parkway on Johns Island. The current recorded plat has it at 2.1 acres, and this is located about a mile north on Betsy Carrison from the Betsy Carrison Nature Trail projects that were approved in previous cycles. They are requesting $65,700 in rural Greenbelt funds with a 263% match equaling $172,650. And we have Kali Farah here to present this project. He's the land preservation specialist with the Kiowa Conservancy.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Great to see you all again. It's a pleasure to be before you this morning. For the first time, we are presenting to you a project that is not having the title of Betsy Carrison Nature Trail, but this one is just as equally important and exciting. And before we get into the meats and bones of it, just kind of want to give you a brief background of how it got started. So the landowner who's here with me today, Dr. Anderson, he reached out through a mutual colleague from the Center for Heirs. And so what that told me initially is that the word of our conservation work is getting out. We're starting to get calls in. And he had a dream. It was a simple dream that he wanted to see his land preserved in perpetuity. And I'm going to let him talk more about the family history of the land, but he's got a deep connection to it. And at the end of the day, he wanted to see his family land and his family legacy preserved in perpetuity. So we've been spending the last 2 years creating a lifelong relationship, but also creating the conservation tool that will bring his dream to reality and will be the best outcome for him and the conservation organization, us involved. And through that, we have come up with a purchase conservation easement. The formal name of the conservation easement is the Sarah Lee Freeman Anderson Biodiversity and Wildlife Habitat Conservation Easement, but to keep things simple, we'll call it the Freeman Anderson Conservation Easement or the Anderson Tract. So, just to give a quick recap of who the Conservancy is, we are an accredited nonprofit land trust, historically working on Kiowa Island, but in 2019 we expanded our conservation works to include Seabrook and Johns Island, from the keywords being its environs, so our surrounding area, and that's what brought us onto Johns Island as well. This number has slightly changed since the last time I was before you. We now are up to 3,869 acres of preserved land, 18 easements, and 61 owned properties. Our focal area, the areas that we look to conserve land, is all of southern Johns Island, Seabrook Island, and Kiowa Island, with, as you know, a central focus on Betsy Carson Parkway, an area that has been troubled with development pressures, and it was right outside our gate, and it was a great place to start. We've had a lot of great momentum, a lot of great success through the help of the Greenbelt program and the Conservation Bank so far. So to dive a little bit farther into the property that we're talking about today, also called the Jenkins Tract, owned by Mr. Anderson here, Dr. Anderson. It's a single parcel. It's about 2.9 acres is what's 2.09 acres is what's deeded. We believe that there is more land ownership than that, so we're getting a new survey that we hope to get completed in the next couple months, or probably in the next month now. So we believe there's closer to 5 acres total, including the marsh. And there's many significant conservation values to this, but we see this really as a cornerstone of conservation, a leading example for small landowners on Johns Island. If you look at the broad picture of Johns Island, many lots are piano key parcels that are slender in size and extend to the marshes of Bohicket Creek, and they're very small. What we want to show is that not just is all land conservation important, regardless of the size, it's also achievable. And so that is where we see, if we can get some momentum with this, that we can encourage other landowners to follow suit and preserve their land and show that this really can work for y'all and it's a possibility. So the core conservation values we see, one, cultural significance. This area is rich in culture, and that is what we're seeking to protect within the Johns Island community. It does have freshwater wetlands on site and nearby that this would further protect by protecting the natural habitat. Obviously, the land is very close to Bohicket Creek and the marshes, so protecting this land from development would protect the lands that are critical to clean water and filtration. It has a dense habitat from a marsh edge to open pine area to a dense maritime forest. So it's got a lot of different habitat types supporting a variety of different wildlife species, both threatened and endangered. Again, community trust, right? When we're going out and meeting the community, it's hard to tell a landowner, right? You say, look, we want to help you preserve your land, but with an easement, it pretty much, tells you what you can and cannot do, right? So they have to have that will for themselves too, to have more control over future generations and what happens to that property. And that's not always the easiest conversation to have in the beginning. And so we're building that community trust, and we've come a long way. We think this can be a leading example. And it further supports the urban growth boundary line, which is a little bit south, making sure that that line is solidified and that urban sprawl stops and rural lands remain. But at the end of the day, it's a way of life, and it's a sense of place for not just wildlife, but the human communities as well on Johns Island. To give you a little overview of what the conservation easement details, it was Mr. Anderson's dream to have it mostly just undeveloped. He wants it natural and for wildlife habitat. At the end of the day, that's what he wanted. And so this easement does just that. This land will never be developed. It will be protected for wildlife habitat and passive recreation. He's given up almost every right to this land through his easement because he just wants it to be natural property. There is a small building envelope for him to have a gazebo or viewing tower, some nature trails, and probably a pervious parking area to be able to access the property more appropriately. It is also his dream to incorporate a public access component to the property. We have allowed that in the easement. He really wants to see this property used by school children and others for research, to learn about the native flora and fauna, immerse themselves in nature, and learn about the natural environment. And we would also want to incorporate educational opportunities. So that is a part of this vision, and we're happy to help them do that. To give you just kind of a visual of the property, this is at the back of the property overlooking the marshes and creeks of Bohicket Creek. This is a little bit farther back, but the same area where we hope the gazebo or viewing tower would eventually go. And this is looking back through the other direction, so you can see how dense the vegetation is supporting all the wildlife in the area. Again, how critical this is to clean water. And this is kind of looking, he owns a sliver of the land across from the main parcel, the main peninsula over there. An aerial view at a higher tide, you can see the point of the property is here. It's like a little peninsula. This is from the creek looking back. Again, this is the whole property. And just so you can see kind of an overview, we got a little video so you can kind of see. As it stretches around, the bulk of the property is here, and then he owns what we believe a little bit of the highland over here, and most of the marsh reaching out to Bohicket Creek. It has historical significance as well. Y'all have seen this through our past applications. The Battle of Hulliver Cut did take place up and down Betsy Carrison, which was formerly Bohicket Road. While this property is not directly in line with what they have documented troops, both Union and Confederate soldiers, it is within the proximity area, and we believe that there's a high likelihood that Union troops did move through his property. And showing kind of a proximity to other preserved lands in the area, we're only just about a mile from those lands that Greenbelt and the Conservation Bank have approved previously. That will be a full-blown nature trail system, and the other preserved lands around the area. Our goal is to create, and what we've already started to do, a wildlife corridor for wildlife to safely travel through this area, and we have to keep building on that. Not every single one is going to be directly contiguous, and so we have to just keep piecing all the puzzle pieces together. A little bit more about what you could see out there for visitors. We do have the ability for boardwalks and footbridges, along with he's going to have signage and educational pieces on the property for people to learn from. We did do a public survey for this project with a 91% approval rating. To kind of just break down the easement side of the purchase, we did also go to Conservation Bank for about 12% of the purchase and Charleston County Greenbelt program for 18%. The landowner donation was very significant, donating up to 70% of the conservation easement value. And so before I get into questions, I want y'all to hear from Dr. Anderson to give you a little bit of history about the land itself and why he's so passionate about this project as well.
Thank you, Colleen. This is
Well,
indeed
thank
an
you.
honor. Good
Well,
morning.
thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you for doing this.
Oh, well, good. So I can sit down now?
Sit down.
Well, anyway, yeah, I appreciate y'all saying this, and I want to say with extreme gratitude, I really appreciate y'all reviewing the application. And it's not so much for me, but the community and my family. Excuse me. I first want to introduce my team. Y'all met Collie. There's Lee, Miss Kelly, I'm surprised. a bit ashamed. But I'm like this. My family were captured in Africa, brought here in the 1800s, landed on in Beaufort. They migrated to the Johns Island area in about the 1800s, and at that point, they changed their names from free sons to free men. That's significant. They bought their freedom. Years later, they brought that property that we're talking about. The quagmire that Mr. Austin talked about in terms of heirs property that other folk have, and I can understand the heirs property philosophy. You wanted to maintain the property in the family. But what my great-great-grandfather and the siblings did is that they partitioned, they divided that property that we're talking about. So I have 1/9 of what was partitioned. It was passed on to me by my mom, Sarah Lee Anderson, Free Johnson. When you go to Johns Island, you'll see a lot of the roads named after freemen. You'll see, when you go to Charleston, but Johns Island, there are freemens, and if you don't have freemens, they're like Jenkins. The road I'm an old college professor, so I'm shocked. The road from Betsy Carrison to my property is named after Jenkins Freeman. That's my great-great-grandmother and great-great-grandfather. They worked hard to maintain property. And it's up to me to carry it forward. My vision is very simple. It's very, very simple. And this is my mission statement. To create a coherent, meaningful, and accessible experience that inspires continual exploration, curiosity, and wonderment. I'll say it again. To create a coherent, meaningful, and accessible experience that inspires continual exploration, curiosity, and wonderment. What the Kewah Conservancy has done is allow my dream to be concrete, to concrete it. And part of what we want to do is provide like educational experiences. I'm working on developing like a website, and it will be in real time where folk can look at the website and look at the biodiversity and the wildlife there. We'll have cultural events where we could talk about the cultural experiences. Prior to my ancestors, European settlers were there. Then prior to European settlers, indigenous people were there. So we're going to talk, hopefully, openly about the experiences and about how that land was maintained to this day. So that's part of what we're going to do. The other thing that we will do too is have nature trails and signposts and signs where we can walk and look at the different elements. The wonderment, as an example, when I first met Collie, and a friend of mine, David, who introduced me to Collie, we were walking, we found this tree that they stopped and they were talking about the tree. This tree is about 400 years old. That's the wonderment that I want to encourage by this property. And with the funds, it will be poured back into the property, poured back into the kinds of things that I want. The cameras are going to be incredibly expensive because we have to maintain the natural habitat. We don't want to blind the birds and that sort of thing. So the cameras and those sort of things are not going to be cheap. So a lot of the things we're going to do will be, again, vetted by Collie and Lee and the Conservancy. And I do a lot of the work and I give them the examples of that. And the other thing that we want to do too, as Collie mentioned, we're going to have like viewing stands, a pagoda, where we can come and look and talk and just kind of be at one. And again, part of it is to share the land.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to try to follow up after that. That was great.
Any questions?
And answer any questions. Yes, sir.
Well, first, thank you for your bravery, your passion, and the story, because without a story, you lose a lot of history. So thank you for that. And I think I know the answer to this question. You have fee simple versus easement. Is there a reason we're not going fee simple?
Yeah, he wanted to retain ownership of his family land. And that's, we want that too. We don't want to lose that connection. If landowners can tell the story the best, and when they want to hold on to it, that's where it has the most impact. Yes, sir.
Again, thank you for your story, and it's a wonderful piece of property.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for all that. I would just mostly just for clarification, like what is the time frame for public access?
Yeah, so, it's kind of up to Mr. Anderson. It's not mandatory per the application or per the easement, but it is his vision and his dream. There are certain things that would probably need to be done before. Now, we could have groups come out and visit the property. That's not terrible, but before, Jenkins Freeman Road is a road, but it's not cleared all the way. And so you've got the road needs to be maintained a little better, and we need to establish trails. So I won't put any definite time frame on it, but hopefully in the next couple of years that we'll be starting to have public to use this property.
And then a follow-up to more of the Conservancy, what is the view of kind of the corridor idea, connectivity to these, you talk about these piano keys, like will there be, and I should know this, but on Betsy Harrison, is there a clear biking path currently, and could that be tied in a sort of network sense to all the things you have a vision for buying?
That's exactly right. Yes, there is a sidewalk that extends the entire length of that side of Betsy Harrison Parkway all the way to the Ace Hardware intersection. It's not the best sidewalk in the world, but there is a sidewalk, and the county's been improving that area. So that's our connectivity, and with the help of the Greenbelt program and Eric and their team, we recently got an amendment passed to the ZLDR that allows public access parking to be centralized in one spot so long as the other public areas within 1,000 feet, so you don't have to keep moving parking spaces down the road. They can access that and then take the sidewalk down. There are many more properties on Betsy Harrison Parkway that we are interested in. There's one very close to Mr. Anderson's on Jenkins Freeman Road that's for sale, and that's something that we're looking into as well right now. There's a lot of pieces to connect, and we're going to have a lot more success going down the future too. So yeah, there's more to come. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You say that you would like to add a gazebo and outdoor seating. So what is the actual impervious surface of this area?
The full calculation I don't have on hand, but I know we're far under the impervious limit set by the Greenbelt program. The gazebo, I believe, is what, 15 by 20. It's less than 300 square foot.
It's enough to see, we measure, I measure it as 10 to 12 people can get there comfortably. It's about 350, yeah.
And all the outdoor seating is, it's not like it's going to be open benches and, maybe some wood, platforms to sit on. It's not going to be like a formal setting by any means. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Just to be curious, are there any current structures on the property right now?
No, sir, there are not. And we've got the survey crew. They're going to outline for the conservation easement where the gazebo or viewing tower could be. And we're hoping to put it in that front area overlooking the marsh. But, of course, you have to watch the critical lines and so forth. But we want to see if it could go there. And that's already a cleared open area. We don't want to disturb any habitat if we don't have to.
I want to say something about the question that was raised about public access. That's a challenge because on one hand, to maintain the beauty of the property, then you're talking about security cameras, and no one's there. So we could think about it, but that's going to be really a challenge. So it's not like I summarily don't want the public. With that carries a lot of liability. Right now, I have to look at getting liability insurance. It's a quagmire that maybe the board can help me with, but it's not an easy answer. One solution, though, is that's why we're going to have a really nice website. So there'll be public access via that website, which will be a live stream. Schools and anybody who would like to visit, will be more of a vetting process where I will vet as long and with the Conservancy. But we're talking about a lot of time, a lot of planning, a lot of manpower. But I don't say I don't want the public. It's just that it has consequences there, and even at night, because it's open access, no gates, nothing. So it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I understand that. Any more questions? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. The ayes have it.
Thank you so much.
Next.
All right, the next project up for consideration is the Station 24 Boardwalk construction. The applicant is the town of Sullivan's Island. This is a minor improvements only project in the urban area. They're proposing a 6-foot wide and 625-foot long replacement boardwalk. So there is an existing boardwalk there that's just been weathered and damaged over time. The new boardwalk is proposed to be raised and possibly extended in some areas due to flooding issues on that path. They're requesting $29,595 in the town of Sullivan's Island urban funds. Again, there's slightly less funds on hand than their request. So if approved, there'd be a temporary negative balance of $1,565 until the FY26 allocation. Their match is over 1,300%, which equals $397,540. And I have Rebecca Fanning here to present the project. She's the Director of Resilience and Natural Resource Management with the town of Sullivan's Island.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have a situation on Sullivan's Island, this little fluke of the jetties that were installed in the harbor, where we have about 200 acres of maritime forest that otherwise would be beachfront on Folly. That's just a disruption of sediment transport, and as such, within living memory, these areas hugging the coast of Sullivan's have expanded out. There are wetlands forming as the groundwater is rising, and this has just been a challenge for the town to sort of keep up with the pace of A, those accesses getting longer, and B, the wetlands expanding at the same time. So that star just shows where Station 24 is in relation to the Ben Sawyer Bridge that you usually enter the island from, and some of the landmarks there in the commercial district, the school, et cetera. Also conveys that this is some of the widest beach front that we have on the island. So distance from dune to water, this particular access point can accommodate a lot of visitors. Charleston region, as you know, is growing exponentially, and so we have more and more visitors coming to the island every year to enjoy that beach. This map, with the yellow areas show high ground. Those are dune ridges, and then and some of those teal colors are the wetlands that we're dealing with. And the current entryway to that boardwalk headed to the beach, you can see in the bottom left picture there, some residents have put out plywood boards. It holds water badly in that area where you would enter onto the boardwalk. So looking at expanding it, just making access better for, by extending that boardwalk closer towards the road. And then the areas that do travel through wetlands, sadly, that boardwalk was not raised high enough, so the boards are sitting in water for extended periods of time, and it's exacerbated the rot to that boardwalk that's out there. So the idea would be to raise the new boardwalk up out of that water level to hopefully preserve it for a little longer next go around. Community support. We have a few email chains that I put forward with the application where several residents voiced their concerns for the current state of the boardwalk and support for its renovation. And again, the project costs are there on the bottom left.
Any questions?
Motion for approval.
I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it.
Thank
you. Yeah, they only want 30,000, supposed to cost for 500.
Next project for consideration is another segment of Mount Pleasant Way. This is Rifle Range Road, Ben Sawyer to Venning. Obviously, the applicant is the town of Mount Pleasant. This is a fee simple corridor project. As the title suggests, this would go from Ben Sawyer and traverse along the north side of Rifle Range Road, ending at Venning Road, and this would connect to three other segments of Mount Pleasant Way that have already been approved. The town is requesting $1,073,100 in the town's urban funds for the 10,853 linear foot multi-use path. Again, their current balance is negative 72,357. So approval of this project would, put them in the negative, even more so until the FY26 allocation, which is expected to be 1.3 billion. Their match is 214% and equaling 2,300,000. And I have James Aton here, the Deputy Director of Capital Projects and Transportation, to give you some further details.
Good morning, Board. Again, James Aton. Pleasure to be here again to present another section of the Mount Pleasant Way, a portion of the Greenbelt spoke portion of Hubs and Spokes. Today we'll be talking about the Rifle Range Trail. This is an extension of the previously approved portion between Venning and Bragg Drive that was approved in the last funding cycle. And this one will continue that down to the Ben Sawyer Boulevard roadway. So as was stated, we have just about a little shy of 2 miles of new roadway, or actually over 2 miles of new shared use path that will impact proposed 55 properties, potentially impact. The path itself is proposed to be designed on the north side of the roadway where the existing sidewalk is, and poorly maintained at this point and underutilized. We are requesting $1,073,100 with a match from of $2.3 million, which is from the US DOT's Safe Streets and Roads for All. So this project is funded for design and construction. And a note on that, we do anticipate receiving word and hopefully approval from US DOT to execute our agreement in the next few months. So this approval will hopefully coincide with our ability to begin the design process of that trail system, as well as the previously approved rifle range section. Attractions in this area include the East Cooper Montessori School. This is a K through 8 school, as well as the Oyster Point neighborhoods, Whitesides Elementary, existing paths along Founders Way, and the Marshview Trail. So to provide some context as to location, here's a vicinity map that locates some of those points of interest, not to mention the future connection to Bensor, which is also funded through that Safe Streets and Roads for All grant for a shared use path and access management strategy promoting safer bike and pedestrian use out to our neighbors on Sullivan's Island. Here's a map of the entire Mount Pleasant Way spine route system. The red shown is existing trail, whereas the green is imminent portions of trail. So you can see how this piece ties pretty critically into already funded or imminent sections of the shared use path in one of the town's busiest commercial districts, the Central Business District of Coleman and Ben Sawyer, as well as providing, again, access out to Sullivan's Island and early loop opportunities through the Midtown area of Watermark, Midtown, and Founders Way. So we do have this section of trail is critical from a safety standpoint. Again, harkening back to the funding we've received, this is a safety improvement initiative that the U.S. Department of Transportation has deemed warranted for funding. So why Mount Pleasant Way? I know you are all very familiar with the project itself, but to touch on the highlights, this was born out of a community-driven feedback of the town's 2019 comprehensive plan, and was further vetted through the master planning efforts in 2020 that was ultimately adopted in 2021 as the map that you just saw, with the intention of connecting destinations, recreation, school, commercial, and neighborhoods. So this does, again, as I stated, fall in line with the Greenbelt's hubs and spokes concept. This is a green way to connect those public access to recreation and commercial and educational opportunities. It also celebrates local history and culture by, again, providing those non-motorized access points to these facilities. You know, parking is a big issue at some of our recreation facilities due to the fact that they aren't connected at this point via non-motorized infrastructure. And so by having this, we're reducing traffic on the roadways, we're improving access, equitable access to these areas. And then again, the underlying goal and undercurrent on all of this is safety improvements. Rifle Range Road ranked high in our safety action plan that was completed in 2023. It showed this as a corridor that is incredibly susceptible and vulnerable to those incidents between those most vulnerable road users of bikes and pedestrians and vehicles. So what is a shared use path? A shared use path is a paved 10 to 12 foot path that is open to all wheeled devices, non-motorized, and foot traffic as well. You know, it is the vision of the Mount Pleasant Way to have these destinations as are listed here connected via these non-motorized uses to promote a healthy community. Active living by design at its core basis requires this type of infrastructure for folks to safely navigate the town outside of their vehicles. So the TPL Park Serve, which is something new that I think the Greenbelt has recommended applications utilize. This shows the red line is the proposed alignment of the shared use path in relation to the two schools that are along the alignment, which show a 10-minute walk range in this lighter blue. So this really does fill a gap that currently exists of unsafe infrastructure along Rifle Range Road for elementary age students to access these facilities. Additionally, the TPL Park Serve shows the needs for new park facilities in relation to existing facilities. So we have shown in the dark purple as very high, medium purple is high, and lighter is moderate. And this corridor runs along both high and moderate needs for additional recreation facilities. Currently, and not shown on the map here, but shown in green on this graphic, does show that Marshview Trail Park, which currently has no non-motorized access to it. You have to drive your car or navigate crossing Rifle Range Road with no facilities on planned south side here to actually access that without walking on roadways. So again, in line with the Greenbelt goals of the hubs and spokes, we are part of the corridor shown in the light blue, which is, only received about 101 miles currently funded of the 200-mile goal. So after these additional 2 miles, we are moving the needle again up on these spokes portions of the Greenbelt goals. Other projects that are sort of in relation to this and add connection, and just to show sort of the success that we've had and the support from the public and the drive of this initiative as a whole, Von Edke Parkway, Park West, most recently the Rifle Range Hamlin Trail section, which installed the town's first pedestrian bridge. All of these will connect eventually with this proposed section brought to you today. And then, of course, the ones I've mentioned a lot already, the Ben Sawyer Boulevard section, Park Avenue Boulevard, All-American Boulevard's under construction right now, which includes shared use paths. So a lot of activity and effort going into bridging these gaps in network right now. We did host a public meeting on January 6th that was very well attended. We hosted the meeting in the project location at Mount Pleasant Waterworks site. I think we had about 62 people in attendance. Gave a brief presentation very similar to this, and then answered questions for about an hour and a half. And these are some of the things that we heard from that meeting, as well as the online survey. So I think it is worth noting we did receive about 83% in support of the project, but a lot of things that we've heard in the past on Mount Pleasant Way segments in already developed areas are how are we going to engage with property owners, deal with landscaping, deal with property owners who may not be amenable to a purchase. And I would like to be clear that the Mount Pleasant Way does, and obviously Greenbelt funds cannot be used for condemnation or eminent domain, and it is not the town's intent to use our funds through our capital improvement program to invoke those town rights. We will work with property owners, and if need be, stay within the existing right-of-way. So it's not an all or nothing as it comes to the width of the path. So moving on to the design, a lot of the design is context sensual with or context sensitive with the alignment that we're dealing with. So we have areas along this section that are curb and gutter, that are open section, that have drainage issues, that have grand oak trees. And so all of these are sort of tools in our toolbox to address those issues, board walking over the root systems of grand oaks in order to preserve them and not damage the root systems. Improvement to historical drainage issues in these areas, which we've already worked from our public meeting with DOT to make some temporary impacts there at Bowman Road and Rifle Range. So a lot of these things will come to fruition and be addressed through our design process, which again, upon release of those SS4A grants funds in a few months, we anticipate to begin, which will include additional public meetings to seek input from residents and property owners. Here are some renderings of similar examples to this trail. We have one in the top left of Mathis Ferry. This is finalizing design and going to construction this summer. And then the previous renderings in middle and shown on right are those that came as part of the last Rifle Range Road section submittal. So we do intend to include components of landscaping, bioswales, in accordance with the town's low impact development standards, to again make this an attractive path system and not just a larger concrete sidewalk. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Any questions? Do we have public comment?
We do. We have Mr. George Freeman.
Okay. Mr. Freeman. Your name and address, please.
Good morning. George Freeman, 1450 Bowman Road.
Okay.
All that sounds real great, except for one thing. It's a bad idea on Rifle Range Road. Our communities are old communities that still have mailboxes on the roadway. The elderly still have to walk out to the mailbox to get their mail. You're taking a safe situation and creating an unsafe situation with what's being proposed here. When it comes to our trash, our garbage cans go where this widening will occur. Our debris goes where this sidewalk will go. It will create havoc, having increased traffic for cycling in this area. I've cycled all my life in Mount Pleasant before we even had sidewalks. The existing sidewalks work fine. I still cycle today. To create what we have here will create a situation that will encourage motorized vehicles to use this to traverse through the community. There's been the discussion about golf carts. People currently use golf carts on the existing sidewalks. The present council says they will not allow golf carts on it. But we all know when this one leaves, the next one comes in, and they can say it's okay to have golf carts on it. So what you'll do is you'll take a quiet, safe community and create an unsafe situation for the residents who have to go out to get their mail, and when they put the trash out, create a situation for those who are going to be trying to cycle through the community to have to traverse around trash cans and trash debris when there's other options to this. This is a bad idea. It disrupts quiet, peaceful communities, and I'm asking you today not to approve this because even though he said there's a large majority of the people who support that, those are the majority of the people who have moved here, who lives in communities off of Rifle Range Road. They're not, our community is on Rifle Range Road. There's a big difference. You see 15% say they don't want it. That's the communities that live along Rifle Range Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Would you like to address any of those concerns?
Yes, absolutely. So this is not a unique situation on Rifle Range Road that we've dealt with as far as it relates to mailboxes or yard debris or places to place trash pickup. Mathis Ferry Road is a apples to apples comparison of which we've completed the design on and worked with those property owners to make those things happen and still create a safe environment for those interactions. I think from the golf cart perspective, it is state law that golf carts cannot be on pedestrian facilities. That is our police department stance. That is our town council stance. We have ordinances to further support and allow for enforcement of that. And our police are enforcing that currently. While we may not catch every instance like speeding and things like that, it is something that is on their agenda to enforce. And certainly as this path itself makes its expansion in the town, that will also come with that, as well as a public education component, signage, and localized enforcement. So I think a lot of the concerns of the community can be addressed through the design process and then also through enforcement upon completion of the project. I think it's worth noting that on Rifle Range Road, just shy of 20% of the town's population lives and has direct and only access to Rifle Range Road. And again, this is part of the hubs and spokes method of the Greenbelt, a destination or doorstep to destination. We don't want people leaving their homes, getting in their cars to go to these recreational facilities. We want them to walk and bike from their homes utilizing these Greenbelt systems or Greenway systems. So happy to elaborate if there's further questions on that.
Any more questions? Go ahead.
Can you elaborate on the dangers that were expressed by Mr. Freeman about people going to take their trash out or get the mail?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in a sense those dangers exist today. You are legally allowed to cycle on the sidewalk and walk as part of the town's bike ordinance. And so a widening of this doesn't necessarily create any issue that doesn't exist today. I think if anything, it provides a wider area which will include signing and striping, and in areas where we have these conflicts, as shown in the previous rendering here in the top right, where we have those conflict zones, we have the opportunity to install pigmented asphalt or concrete or striping to not only notify those users of the path system of where they could expect conflicts from vehicles or other pedestrians, but also to allow for those designated areas for trash and debris pickup.
Any other questions? Any motions?
Make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Unanimous? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Next, please. I don't like this.
Okay, the last project for your consideration is the Coakley Chapel Park. The applicant is Low Country Land Trust. This is a fee simple request in the urban unincorporated area. This property is 6.5 acres located in the historic Hamlin Beach community, excuse me. It is located between Atlanta Drive and Hamlin Beach Road. Hamlin Beach Road down here. As you can see, there's 3 access points off of Atlanta Drive there to access these properties. The Land Trust is requesting $1,714,500 in urban unincorporated funds. And as you know, this is a depleted allocation, so this would require further forward spending or your recommendation to fund this from an alternative allocation. There is a 23% match equaling $385,000. This property is to be transferred to the Hamlin Beach Community Association, but Low Country Land Trust would retain ownership during the initial phase to establish some minor improvements and kind of get the association established to manage the property. And there's an existing historic chapel, as you can see here, right in this part of the property up front there. And that would have some minor improvements to it to serve as a community center, and the entire property would be managed as a community park. So I will turn it over to Sam Sewell with the Low Country Land Trust. He's the Community Lands Director. He's got to walk.
Good morning. Thank you all for having me today to present this project to you. This is the Coakley Chapel Park. It's a fee simple acquisition within the Hamlin Beach settlement community in Mount Pleasant. Hamlin Beach community is Charleston County's most recently historically designated communities, and this Coakley Chapel was one of the contributing resources to that application. So there's the chapel right there. This is the third structure, third establishment of this chapel. The original one was burned down in the early 1900s, and then the second one was destroyed by Hurricane Hugo. So this is the third construction of it, but it is the exact same site of the chapel that's been there since around 1927. So this property, this project will protect and preserve important cultural and historical resources within the Hamlin Beach community. It'll protect important habitat and open space, and as well as provide publicly accessible green space and prevent incompatible development. So this is for the purchase of the property, it'll be about $1.6 million from Greenbelt, with $100,000 of minor improvement funds to kind of get the park up and running. This is in $14,500 for closing costs and project costs, and that will be matched with a $300,000 request from Conservation Bank, and an $85,000 donation from the landowners. So that's about 23% match. So this is, like Chris mentioned, will be a buy, protect, transfer project with the Low Country Land Trust. We'll purchase the property, place a conservation easement on it, and then transfer it to the Hamlet Beach Community Association. We do add a support element into that model. So this will be similar to the Beefield Community Park project that Greenbelt funded a few years ago, in which the land trust will kind of maintain interim ownership as we oversee the development of the park and kind of get everything up and running. And so this will be the first official community-owned land within the Hamlin Beach community. It's similar to the Phillips Community Park, Beefield Community Park, Red Top Park, which was funded last cycle, and it's this community centered within the settlement communities. I've spoken to this body before on those previous projects regarding the vital importance that community centers and open spaces have to the county settlement communities. So there's a strong connection between the land, to the land, and it's one of the foundations of the Gullah Geechee cultural traditions in the Low Country. So churches, cemeteries, schools, and later lodge halls and community centers served as central landmarks within these communities historically. And these community buildings were created as places for gatherings and socialization. They acted as social aid networks during Jim Crow era and venues for recreation, doubled as prayer houses. Coakley Chapel during several different construction and phases of the other churches in the community has served in the interim as the churches for those congregations. And then it's also has functioned as community meeting halls and polling places. And so historically, each community within Charleston County, each settlement community within Charleston County has had these community gathering spaces. And within the 21st century and later 20th century, those places have been lost. And so this is a unique opportunity where we are able to officially establish this community-owned space by preserving the exact traditional space that has been that community space. And so I'll touch on the specific importance of the Coakley Chapel a little bit later. So this also has a lot of habitat and open space value to it. So protection of this property is going to provide really important flood and climate resiliency to Hamlin Beach and the county and the state. And so there's fresh and brackish wetlands on the property, and it's almost, you'll see on the next slide, entirely identified as priority coastal marsh migration space by TNC's climate resilience model. There's a channelized creek on there that's the headwaters to a tidal creek that feeds into Hamlin Sound, and so that was channelized in the 1950s, as well as there's wetlands that feed into that creek, and then there's some ponds that were established by the family in the early 70s as both flood management as well as some early aquaculture. So there you can see the climate resiliency model from TNC. I mean, show that it's pretty much almost all a coastal marsh migration space. Excuse me. And then in the infrared, you can see there's wetlands right here that feed into, and this drains into the creek, and these are the ponds, and this drains off the property into the Hamlin Sound, and there's some wetlands as well. So this has a lot of vital wetland and kind of flood resiliency aspect to it, as well as wildlife habitat and ecological value. So there will be a conservation easement on the property. No subdivisions, no residences, limited impervious surfaces, protections of grand trees, and all your standard aspects. It'll be a public park owned by the Hamlin Beach Community Association, and it will include the Coakley Chapel Community Center, walking trails, recreational ponds, which you can see right here in the picture, and passive open space. So the Coakley Chapel was originally referred to as the meeting house within the Hamlin Beach community, and it was started by Mr. Sam Coakley in the early 1900s. It quickly became a very valuable community resource, and as it served as a haven when Hamlin Beach residents needed to address important community issues. Community leaders would actually strike an iron plow that hung outside the chapel, and in the first picture, you can see the plow still hangs there. So that's a pretty unique aspect about it. There it is right there. So that was their call to order for the community meetings. It was a center. The chapel was a center for the community support services. There was a community well that was right behind the chapel that the community would come and draw water for cooking and cleaning, as well as drinking. And then it also was a cultural hub as well. So the Hamlin Beach community has one of the largest concentrations of sweetgrass basket weavers and sewers in the Charleston area. And the Coakley Chapel played a vital role in the vibrancy and prosperity of Hamlin Beach's Gullah culture. So the first wholesale marketing venture for sweetgrass baskets took place out of the Coakley Chapel, and it was started in 1916 by Sam Coakley, and between the prominent Charleston merchant, Mr. Legerton. Mr. Legerton would come to the Coakley Chapel every week to pick up and make purchases that he would then sell through his Seagrass Basket Company, as well as his bookstore downtown on King Street. And so the basket sewers of Hamlin Beach have been recognized both nationally and internationally. Mary Jane Manigault, that name y'all might know. She's the daughter of Sam Coakley, and she was named as the National Heritage Fellow by the National Endowment for the Arts, which is the U.S. government's highest honor in folk and traditional arts. And then Karen Alston, who is the granddaughter of Mary Jane Manigault and great-great-granddaughter of Sam Coakley. Her and her husband, Corey Alston, they have several pieces in the International African American Museum and the Smithsonian. And then recently you might have read that the Alstons presented a sweetgrass basket to former President Joe Biden on his last visit. So apart from the Coakley Chapel, the property has served the community in several ways. Like I mentioned, the ponds were constructed in the 1970s for both flood mitigation for the whole community, as well as aquaculture to cultivate blue crabs. And the property provides habitat for harvesting materials for sweetgrass baskets. This property is also adjacent to Deliverance Chapel, which is another one of the contributing resources to the historic designation. And so this will provide connectivity from Atlanta Drive via boardwalks and trails to Deliverance Chapel, as well as connecting Coakley Chapel and Deliverance Chapel, or Deliverance Tabernacle, excuse me. So like I mentioned, this will be publicly accessible park, and it will allow for passive recreational opportunities as well as educational opportunities to learn about the history and culture of Hamlin Beach community and the environment and ecology of the surrounding land and water. It's going to also, pretty crucially, prevent incompatible development. And as y'all know, I think we're all aware of the development pressures that the settlement communities in Charleston County are facing right now. There are, in this particular quadrant of Hamlin Beach community between Hamlin Road and Atlanta Drive, and then Boston Grill Road on the north side, there are developers that have begun purchasing lots within this. So this will protect land right in the middle. Excuse me, right in the middle of that kind of square of property, and so kind of prevent any connectivity between the developers, which they have already begun seeking to do. And so, yeah, that's the kind of the gist of the project, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
And this is an aerial of the project of the property. You can see the ponds right there. Coakley Chapel is a little bit off right here, so this will be access into this area as well as access from right here as well.
Go ahead.
From your presentation and from your application, I've noticed that this seems to be primarily a historic site you're trying to protect. How many organizations who fund historical and cultural protection did you contact and ask for money, who probably should be, being part of this?
Traditionally, in terms of contribution to acquisitions costs, organizations like Preservation Society and Historic Charleston Foundation have not contributed to these types of projects. They've contributed costs for, in the past, for very minimum amounts. Preservation Society did submit a letter of support for this project, but typically the Greenbelt, which obviously historical and cultural properties are included within the Greenbelt ordinance, as this has been a source for the funding of these projects.
Historical and cultural sites, there's 100 points that we, base our ratings on, and that only accounts for 6 points out of 100.
think Nora's making that point because we're, we're already forward funded so much. So I'm going to first ask Eric a question. Eric, of the two projects we've forward spent on, can you recall or do you have easy access to what the matches were on those?
I don't.
Not handy, probably.
No, I'm sorry, I don't have that handy.
Okay. It's just an expensive project. It seems like a very worthy project. That's not honestly in my head as a question so much. It's how do we pay for it fairly? And I think you probably knew coming in that was going to be an issue. And that problem's only going to get more dramatic or
More restrictive.
more restrictive. Yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. And so to Nora's point, like, do you have access to other people you could ask to get the match up, or is every single little parcel required? What can we do? And this is a question to you. Is there anything that you can do in your tool, your toolbox you have to improve this situation so that we can confidently afford to spend some of it? I don't see us getting to that number, quite honestly.
I think we're looking for a better match.
Yeah.
To cut it short. And one, the chapel sits on, I believe, 2.7 acres out of the 6.5, correct? And that would be probably the parcel we'd want to protect, instead of all there's houses and then there's protected area and a house and protected area. It's not contiguous land like one square like we had back at 10 Mile. We bought two parcels that were all contiguous land. This here's fixed match, it's nothing contiguous. It's like wrapped around houses and, it's going to be in people's yards, and the protected area be protected area house. I mean, it's kind of all over the place. So the 2.7 acres with the chop on it, I understand. I don't understand why we're going around the whole neighborhood trying to protect in between homes.
Yeah, certainly.
So, and the match isn't to my particular liking, but, everybody else might have a different view of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else?
I have a clarification question just on the allocation. So right now, we're negative 4.2 million, correct, Eric and Chris?
Yeah.
Okay. And then the lifetime projection would put us up 2.6 overall the lifetime, or that's just the total lifetime? So we're already negative on the total lifetime?
That one.
That one, okay.
I'm sorry, repeat the part about the total lifetime.
So it says we have a lifetime projected balance of 2.6 million here. And right now we're negative 4.2. So is that to say we're already negative on the projected total? Or the total lifetime would bring us up out of the negative and positive 2.6?
So the current lifetime allocation is the 2.6 million. So if this project were funded, that would drop to 939,000 available for the remainder of the program.
Okay. So right now, okay, understood. So
Does that
would
clarify
leave us
it?
with pretty much. Yeah, no,
Okay.
I got it. I was trying to understand if that had already done the math. Yeah, and it has.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
So,
That was under $1 million lifetime.
on the cover page, it says that most of the zoning is S3 and subject to the Hamlin Beach Historic District moratorium. I don't know what the moratorium is. Do you have any information on that?
Absolutely. Or Eric, you want to?
There's a 2-year moratorium right now on any construction there.
Sam, if you can confidently answer it, go ahead. If not, I'll kick it down to attorney. Mr. Bell, I believe, is familiar with it as well.
It's a 2-year moratorium?
I do not remember the date of adoption offhand, but county council did approve a 2-year moratorium where major subdivisions would not be allowed for that period. And been per the county's zoning and land development regulation ordinance, major subdivisions are subdividing into 5 or more lots.
Okay, thank you.
So you can do 4 or less.
Yeah, this one, it does complicate the funding challenges. A couple other questions about the property itself. Is the chapel currently usable?
It is to an extent. There's currently renovations going on that the family is paying for at the moment, and then obviously we're going to seek additional outside resources to get that up and running.
Is that what the 100,000 is for?
No, the 100,000 cannot be used for
Okay.
impervious surfaces.
So it is habitable, per
Yes,
se?
yeah.
Okay, and it's billed as the Coakley Chapel Park, and it would be the Hamlin Beach Community Association's responsibility to develop a park, manage the property, maintain the property.
Yeah, so what we've kind of realized over the past, past projects working with settlement communities is definitely, it's better to kind of provide a level of support when it comes to development of the site, particularly in achieving the vision of the application in the Greenbelt. And so this would be, for example, like the Red Top Park that was approved that's already in a park. They've already have the facilities ready to go. That was more about just transitioning ownership into that community's hands. So that'll be a simultaneous closing. For example, for this property, similar to the Beefield community property where it's predominantly raw land, Low Country Land Trust will kind of own the property in the interim as we kind of help the community with the development of the park.
To your point about having so many parcels wrapped around
Yeah,
residential.
it's got homes in between. If you look at it, you got a house in the protected area and a home in a protected area, and it's not all contiguous but you like the SEPA.
Yeah, so as you can see on the
See,
map
look at
right
that, it
here.
looks like a body laying there.
Yeah, so this
Arms
comes
and legs
down,
everywhere.
and there's connection. This is all will be the core of the passive open space and trails. So you have 2 trails coming in through there as well. There's Deliverance Tabernacle, which is a community resource right there. So there'll be connectivity throughout here. There's obviously no development within these parcels right here. This is an undeveloped lot, and then there's one home there. So this is really the only area right here that connectivity. Obviously, there's the plan is to have a trail boardwalk that comes down and connects into the ponds. There's a drainage right there, an old creek, and as well as a creek right here. And so that'll be part of it, as well as providing open space is also flooding is a major issue in this community, and so providing flood resiliency and climate resiliency to that is also a major component of this project.
I think that, I don't know what the right move is right now, but I think there's a larger discussion to be had at the GAB about the allocation. I'm not sure if we're ready to move on this or not.
I have a question. Is it possible to reduce the amount that you're going after?
Yeah, we can certainly. We staggered the applications. So we're going to be going for the April round of the Conservation Bank. So we can certainly adjust on the ask to provide more match there.
Okay, go ahead.
I think I have a motion. I would motion for deferral pending a significantly better match or reduction of price, probably both. Well, if you really need, if the project you feel like needs that leg on the top because of the ponds and drainage, et cetera, then the match would need to come up. And number 2, that the chapel and park be a fully fleshed out proposal
In the application.
So that at least public access is assured. That's what's somewhat unclear. Like
Public access will 100% be assured. In terms of like the fleshing out of I don't know if you're particularly meaning like design, which obviously can take quite some time. Park design, it's taken about a year with the B-Fill project, hiring a contractor to do the design phase, and do the master planning. But, per both the Greenbelt grant agreement, that will be recorded with the deed, and the conservation easement, public access will be required on the property.
So I think he's trying to say we need to defer it to GAB and see if you can do a better match, one. B, also, if we could skinny it down to parcel 183 with the chapel. I don't know if we need all 6 parcel in this project.
Well, I made a motion. We can now discuss it, I suppose, correct?
I believe once it's seconded, but could you restate that motion?
Okay.
We're a little,
I motion for deferral
Okay.
pending a better match or a reduction in price, number one, or A. B, a full,
so to be clear, you're wanting them to essentially update their application and bring it back with a reduced ask from Greenbelt.
yeah, that's the goal, reduced ask from the Greenbelt.
And then, and you all will reconsider it at that time?
Yes.
So we would look at adding on another subcommittee meeting just before the next GAB meeting? Is that?
Well, I guess.
Procedurally, your motion should be a motion to defer, and you are simply stating your reasons for the deferral. That recommendation, per your rules, would go to the full GAB, and at that time, then the full GAB would decide whether what they would want to do. If they do want to defer, then that's when it would come back to the subcommittee for a further full subcommittee review.
Okay.
So if we defer now, it goes to the GAB to confirm that deferral.
So just to be clear, the deferral is simply a deferral without caveats.
But then, that is correct, and you are simply, just stating your reason, and it sounds like, from what I can gather, the reasons are concerns about match, concerns about project size, and things of that nature.
Okay.
Perhaps there's a better motion then. I'm going to withdraw that for a second and see if anybody's got a better idea.
Do we need to have a motion for discussion?
So how do we?
Yes, the motion is necessary for the subcommittee to deliberate.
Make a motion to discuss. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
I'm concerned just with the fund generally, which I know really doesn't have anything to do with this project specifically. But, with the lifetime funds, Eric, remind me again what the lifetime timeframe is?
Oh, this is through 2042?
Okay, so, a little bit less than 20 years.
Unless there's an additional,
Right.
The first sales tax would
Sure.
be renewed in the future.
As of now, we have a little bit less than 20 years, and this application would bring us down to under $1 million for the next, 18 years or 17 years? I guess 17, now that we're in 2025. That's concerning to me, and obviously, the intent is for the money to be spent, but in the next 17 years, are we going to be kicking ourselves? I know we've talked before about reallocation, how maybe this particular portion of the funds wasn't allocated enough because it covers such a wide, geographical area, unincorporated urban. But that's a full GAB thing that we could potentially get into. We've talked about it before, but for now, that just concerns me. Really having nothing to do with the merits of this project, which it does seem like a good project. It's just we'd be leaving ourselves pretty hamstrung for the next 17 years.
Agreed, but so if we stick to the project, how can we allay our concerns?
We need a better match, A, and B, does the community need all 6.5 acres?
Any comment?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Anybody?
Considering that we, need a bigger match, and we're talking about, as you said, skinnying down the size of the project, I almost wonder if this doesn't warrant a new application.
Yeah, and just to add to the discussion, it would be good to see a conceptual image of what a plan could be or would be. As a park professional, it's hard to imagine this one as a publicly accessible green space as shown. And then what is the wherewithal of the Hamlin Beach community or whoever what's the wherewithal of the community association to actually implement a park here? There's just lots of questions and concerns.
Then I think I stand by my motion to defer, and I would like the notes to reflect at least my reasons. Is that okay? Okay. So I motion to defer, my reasons being that I think the match should increase or the price should come down so that the Greenbelt monetary request is lower, and B, that there is at least a conceptual idea for how the park would be implemented and operated. Just those two things. And I would also like notes for I think it's a good project, and I would like for it to go forward. So that's my motion. Is that clear?
I second your motion. I believe it's a great project. We need to conserve or to save some of the property, but yeah, we need to see if it's fits the matching, and also maybe not 6 acres, but.
I have a question. If we reduce the acreage, does that completely change this? Is it still a Greenbelt project?
Yeah, sure it would, because you got 6 different TMS numbers. If you just took a few out, I mean, the chapel's the part you're trying to preserve. The other's just land. It's, you got 6 TMS numbers, and I don't know how many owners control those 6 TMS numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I don't know. There's 3 owners? 3 owners, 6 parcels, okay?
And because we're in discussion mode, we have a motion and a second, so we can discuss, right?
That's correct.
That is correct. Okay, so then I would like to just say that I would love for the thing to be that size, but fully designed park. That'd be great, if you take advantage of all that. But then the match has got to come up.
Well, she didn't sign up.
What's the question?
Question is, she said one of the owners is here, is that correct?
So not an owner, but she's with the community.
With the community, somebody here, but she didn't sign up.
That's up to you, sir.
Would you like to speak on behalf of the community? Come on. Your name and address, please.
Good day. My name is Myra Snipe Richardson. My address is 2755 Earl Johnson Lane, Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. I am the president of the Hamlin Beach community. With this Coakley Chapel Park, the Coakley Chapel is very important to the community, but the surrounding area is also important because we're trying to protect this area from overdevelopment, flooding, and the issues that comes with development. I know we just recently became the 4th historic district. There is a moratorium for the next 1.5 years, but because we are S3, those parcels still can have homes, 3 houses per parcel per acre with an ADU. So potentially there can be 6 houses basically on an acre of property. With the wetlands, with the ponds in the area, we have tremendous flooding in the area. one of the parcels that connected close to it on the bottom half, that's a little jagged, there's an application already in to see how potentially that sewer can get there to build 3 houses already. With Mount Pleasant and Mount Pleasant Waterworks, if you're doing a new home, new construction with sewer, and you're connected to an acre or touches Mount Pleasant right now, Waterworks forces you to sign to annex into the town of Mount Pleasant. So with this property and the things that are around this property, they're being advertised right now that if you buy parcels in the Hamlin Beach community, you touch Mount Pleasant, you have to annex into the Mount Pleasant. So it does connect with each other from the Coakley Chapel and wrap around. But when you look at the area to protect it, the wildlife that's in the area, the ponds that are in the area, we're just afraid with contaminations to these ponds if they're developed. If the lot that's on the bottom half is developed with those 3 houses, we're facing contamination. They have to run sewer in there. So when looking at that project, it says cutting down all of those trees to get water and sewer. There's no water or sewer connected right now on the back half. They'll be coming from Alfred Campbell Road to try to connect sewer close to the pond. So it's very important to the community to have all 6 of the acres to protect the wildlife, to protect us from flooding and overdevelopment, because that property is susceptible to overdevelopment if it's not greenbelt and saved. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I do just have one comment about the deferral processes. Once it goes through the GAB, assuming they approve the deferral, they can resubmit their application at any time prior to the next cycle. So there would be some special meetings if that happened after the fact.
Because we're still in discussion mode, and before we vote, would it be better if we had a motion for approval with those caveats?
They're not gonna make a decision on reducing their match now. We want to reduce the match.
I think I like what you did, even though it's unfortunate.
Okay, so Sam, so you basically have 18 months to kind of sort this out, right? Based on what we're hearing on this moratorium and all that.
Yeah, I will, just one note in terms of the timing of the project. The landowners have been marketing the property for sale, and so it's definitely been, they wanted to give the land trust and the community the opportunity to purchase it first, but they are, in the process of trying to sell the properties. All 3 landowners are siblings. They were raised in the community, but they've lived outside the community for some years now. And so one, I think, is in New York, one is in North Carolina, and one is in Atlanta. So they're definitely looking to sell the property. So there is a level of threat there for sure. And so the contract, initially the contract was, we tried to have it terminated in December 31st to give the full year. They asked that it be terminated in the summer, so it's got a June 30th termination on the contract, with the opportunity to extend if both parties agree. But there is a time aspect to it for sure.
Do you think you could improve the application between now and April 9th?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So given that this deferral goes in front of the full GAB, you'll have a chance to speak to it again, and you could change the outcome at that meeting.
Yeah.
If you can improve it between now and then.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, just to be clear, even with the
Mr. Bell, is that in line
they could do
with your understanding of
4 homes.
our rules and procedures that the application could change between now and the GAB meeting without coming back to the subcommittee?
So then it's kind of difficult to say. I I do not believe his application can officially change because he's already submitted an application and the application is what it is in front of you guys. As far as the deferral process, you know, he is welcome to come and state that, hey, I have worked on things in the interim and have improved things. And then I believe that the GAB at that time could take that information and say, well, yes, we can recognize that. And so we will, you know, defer this back to the subcommittee for a full review of all this new information that may or may not be on the table at that future date.
So it wouldn't be an official application change, but he could give us a verbal update.
And the land is not in danger of imminent development, right?
I mean, I guess depends on what your definition of imminent. In terms of, I think it's a year and 18 months till the moratorium is. But also, obviously, developers are able to purchase land and hold it, such as the other parcels near there, is kind of a tactic that's been currently being used.
And again, that moratorium only applies to parcels that are subdivided 5 times. That's considered a major subdivision, correct?
I would like to clarify, you know, I believe it is 5. We would have to look at the ZLDR, but it is major subdivision. So whatever the ZLDR defines as major, it is what it is. And off the top of my head, I do not recall if that's 5 lots or if that's 4 lots. But the key is major subdivisions. So you are allowed to have minor subdivisions during this interim period.
Realistically, with the wetlands and having to bring water.
Okay, any motions? We want to try this again.
Then there currently is a motion on the floor to defer
discuss.
that has to be dealt with before.
Right, so,
There's already a second.
Yeah,
Okay.
on Beezers, yeah.
okay, what was the?
So motion was for deferral, and we're still in discussion.
I would just say, please vote nay if you all have a better idea. If anybody has a better idea for how to process this, or say it now.
So, sorry if I missed this, but, so what happens after it's deferred?
The recommendation for deferral will go to the full GAB. And if the GAB approves that deferral, then it would come back to the subcommittee after the application is updated for your reconsideration.
However, it's also true that Sam could bring additional information that might convince the GAB to accept the application as it's written. Right?
Yeah, so the way the process works, you guys are a recommending body to the full GAB, and once it comes before the full GAB, they can take your recommendation or they can make their own new decision. So, you know, they can't, so your motion right now is to defer. They can agree and accept your motion to defer, which would then bring it back to you for a full review, or they can say, hey, you know, thank you for the deferral, but, you know, we like the application or we've heard new information, so we're going to make our own new motion to approve with conditions, deny, or so forth. But the GAB will be reviewing it for its own merits.
Therefore, the full GAB could accept the application as written if you can bring new information.
Or they'll defer it back to us.
Or it'll come back to us, yeah.
So the motion is to defer.
Yes, the motion stands.
Do I have a second?
Yeah,
We already have a second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, we're deferring.
Thank y'all.
Kicking the can.
But
Thank
do
you.
hope it works out.
Thank you.
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Eric, what do we got? We got, let's see here, here's my agenda. I'm buried. Okay.
North Charleston Town Hall.
Just a reminder of the advisory board meeting on April 9th at 10 a.m.
April 9th,
and for you to adjourn.
we're done. Okay, I got a little tricky.